Hi there, I'm Tony Lee, and this is Hot Flasher, your daily menopause podcast that serves up fresh news, research, and wellness tips. I've built a daily news pipeline to find the latest on women's health and menopause research. Allow me to introduce my co-host Nikki, who handles the headlines. Take it away, Nikki.
Thanks, Tony. We've got a good one today, 3 stories, and none of them are what you'd expect from a menopause podcast on a Wednesday. One involves Viagra, sort of. One involves a vaccine you may have already gotten and may be undervaluing. And one is about a part of menopause care that almost nobody in medicine is talking about, and probably should be. Let's start with the sildenafil story, because it's genuinely interesting and I want to make sure we get the framing right before anyone's eyes roll. Sildenafil is the drug in Viagra. It works by relaxing blood vessels and increasing blood flow. In men, that means erections, but blood flow to genital tissue matters for women too. Arousal, sensation, lubrication, comfort. The plumbing is different. The need is the same. A phase 1 study published this week in PubMed, led by Cornell K and colleagues, tested a topical sildenafil cream applied directly to genital tissue in healthy postmenopausal women. Phase 1 means they were asking 2 basic questions. Is it safe, and does the body absorb it the way they'd expect? Not, does it work? That's phase 2 and 3. Just, does it cause harm, and does it get where it's going? The answer to both was encouraging. The cream absorbed well. The dose could be escalated without serious safety signals. That's it. That's the finding. Small study, open label, no placebo, no long-term data. Early, but solid enough to move forward. Now, why does this matter for postmenopausal women specifically? Because estrogen decline changes the tissue. The vaginal walls thin, blood flow decreases, sensitivity drops. This is grouped under the term genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which is the clinical name for a cluster of changes that includes dryness, discomfort with sex, and reduced arousal. It affects a lot of women. Some estimates put it at 40% or more of postmenopausal women experiencing some version of sexual dysfunction. And the treatment options have historically been thin: estrogen cream, ospemifene, and not much else for women who can't or won't use hormones. Topical sildenafil is not a cure. It's not even approved yet. We're at phase 1. But the mechanism makes sense. Increasing local blood flow to tissue that's been getting less of it is a reasonable approach. And critically, because it's applied topically rather than taken as a pill, the amount that gets into the bloodstream should be much lower, which matters for women who have concerns about systemic drug effects. My take: the research is real, the need is real, and I'm glad someone is finally running the trial. Female sexual dysfunction has been under-researched for decades. The fact that we're just now getting phase 1 data on a drug that's been approved for men since 1998 tells you something about whose problems the clinical pipeline has historically been built to solve. This is a step in the right direction, and it deserves to be covered as science, not as a punchline. The Shingles vaccine story is one I want you to actually sit with, because if you're in the age range for Shingrix and you've been putting it off, this might change that calculation. Oxford researchers published findings this week, covered by Stat News, showing that people who got the newer shingles vaccine, Shingrix, had a lower risk of heart disease compared to those who didn't. This follows an earlier finding linking Shingrix to reduced dementia risk. The researchers are describing it as the first vaccine shown to potentially protect both the heart and the brain. The mechanism they're working with: shingles is caused by the varicella zoster virus, the same virus that gives you chickenpox when you're young. The virus never fully leaves, it stays dormant in nerve cells. When it reactivates as shingles, it can trigger inflammation. And inflammation, particularly in blood vessels, is a known driver of both cardiovascular disease and, separately, brain changes associated with dementia. Suppressing that viral reactivation may be reducing inflammatory events that would otherwise puts wear on the heart and brain over time. Now, this is important. This study is what's called a natural experiment. That means researchers looked at real-world data comparing people who got vaccinated to those who didn't, rather than randomly assigning people in a controlled trial. That design can't fully prove causation. There could be differences between the groups that explain the findings. People who get vaccines may have better overall healthcare access, for example. The Oxford team tried to account for that, but no observational study fully closes that door. So I'm not going to tell you this is settled. It's not. But here's what makes it worth paying attention to: the consistency. 2 separate outcomes: heart disease and dementia, both trending in the same direction after Shingrix. That's not nothing. And Shingrix is already recommended for most adults 50 and older to prevent shingles, which is genuinely miserable and can cause lasting nerve pain. The case for getting it was already solid. If the heart and brain data holds up in further research, it gets more solid. The practical point is simple. If you're eligible and haven't gotten it, this is one more reason to ask your doctor about it. The risk-benefit calculation was already favourable. This doesn't change the math so much as it adds to it. The third story is harder to talk about, and I don't want to rush through it. The NAMS journal, that's the North American Menopause Society, published a paper this week on the intersection of intimate partner violence and menopause care. There's no abstract available, so I'm working from what's there and what the field has documented. But the argument the authors are making is one that's been building for a while in the research, and it needs to be heard. Here's what we know from the broader literature. Perimenopause and menopause involve significant hormonal, psychological, and physical changes, mood shifts, sleep disruption, brain fog, increased anxiety, and depression risk. For women who are already in abusive relationships, those changes can be weaponized. Partners may attribute legitimate symptoms to instability. Women seeking medical care for menopause symptoms may be prevented from going, have their medications controlled or withheld, or find that the cognitive and emotional toll of abuse makes it harder to advocate for themselves in a 5-minute appointment. There's also evidence that the midlife period itself, career changes, children leaving home, financial shifts, can change the dynamics of abusive relationships in both directions. Some women find new independence. For others, an abusive partner escalates, and menopause clinicians are often not screening for any of this. The appointment is built around symptom management, hot flashes, sleep, libido, bone health. Intimate partner violence is not typically on the checklist. The NAMS paper is arguing that it should be. This is where I'll put my actual stake in the ground. Menopause care is not just hormones and symptoms. It's a life stage that intersects with everything: mental health, relationships, socioeconomic circumstances, safety. A clinician who asks about hot flashes but never asks whether home is safe is missing something. That's not a criticism of individual doctors, most of whom are working in systems with no time and no training for this. It's a structural problem. But identifying it is how you start to fix it. If you're in a situation where home isn't safe, or you know someone who is, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-7999-7233. That number is always worth knowing. The authors are right to push this into the conversation. Menopause care that only treats what shows up on a symptom checklist is incomplete care.
Thanks for listening to Hot Flasher. We're back tomorrow with more, so don't forget to subscribe. See you tomorrow.